Today I'm going to explain modifiers in Solidity. So what are modifiers? Modifiers are this unique thing that you get in Solidity that you don't really get in other programming languages. And I'll write some modifier and everything will start to make sense. So these have similar syntax like functions do. So to define a modifier, you would have to do modifier, then the name of this modifier, which is, let's say, name1. Then we have the parentheses that we have in functions, then the curly bracket. And in here you would define the code that this modifier has. And modifiers are attached to functions. And if I attach this modifier to this mint function here, the code in this modifier will run first and then the function code in the actual function. And you can see the only difference really in between modifiers and functions is that here you don't really, the modifiers don't really take any keyword here. They're by default internal. And in modifiers, usually you would run checks for some conditions, and for this you would use the require keyword. So you would use the require keyword, and then there's this special thing inside modifiers, which is just a placeholder like this with an underscore, and this represents all the code in the other function. So when we attach this modifier to this function, and you can attach modifiers by just copying the name and pasting it here. And once we attach this modifier, whenever you call this mint function, first we'll check for this required condition, the code of this function will run. So let me give you an example of how you would use modifiers in the real world. So let's say we have an NFT collection smart contract here. We have a mint function, and for every NFT, let's say you can mint each NFT in this collection for 0. Let me write that down, 0.045 ether. And you'd have to, of course, before minting the NFT, so you would have some code here like mint the NFT. I'm not going to write this so we can focus on modifiers. Let's say you have the code here, but before you mint the NFT and give it to the user, you have to check if he paid enough ether or this much ether to this function. And as you can see, this is a payable function, which means you can transfer ether to it. So for this you'll have a modifier. Let's say this modifier is called pay enough ether. I didn't write this correctly, but it's fine. And in the require statement, and usually in modifiers all you do is just require statements. So we'll require that the message.value is equal to 0.05 ether. And now I'm going to take this, I'll paste this here, so attach this modifier here. And now whenever you call this mint function, this modifier will execute, and it will check if you actually send 0.04 ether. Or we can make this even greater or equal than, because if the user wants to pay more, he can pay more. So now if I were to go ahead and deploy the contract as I did here, and if I were to send 10 away and try to mint this NFT, bam, my transaction would revert because I'm not paying enough ether. And if I pay, let's say, 5 ether, which is a lot of ether, let's call this mint function. And as you can see, my transaction was successful and I minted the NFT. Actually, there is even another thing you can do when using modifiers, is you can pass an address, an argument here, just like you would in functions. So let's say I'm buying this address for another person. So I would have to pass an address here, like Earth. So I've defined that my modifier takes in this address recipient, and I would have to pass an address here. Let's go ahead here and copy this address paste it here. So now let's say supposedly my that I'm buying my NFT for this address here. So this is how you would use arguments in modifiers. So I thought I'd just share that. And also what you can do is you can forward any arguments that you have passed in this function to the actual modifier. So let's say I have here, I actually have already a recipient. So I'm going to say recipient, and I want to pass this recipient that I get from the function inside my modifier. So you can do this as well.